Saturday. Christmas comes early.
Unbelievable! Welcome to this incredible scene.
Bills.
To the end zone!
Chargers.
It's a touchdown!
An exclusive NFL game.
That's fantastic!
Live in primetime.
Wow!
Only on Peacock.
With a Christmas gift to their fans.
They're having some fun now.
Bills versus Chargers. Saturday, 7:30 Eastern. Exclusively on Peacock.
Welcome back. I am Kirk Henderson. This is Pod Mavericks Group Therapy. It is about 11 o'clock. The Dallas Mavericks fell to the Minnesota Timberwolves 119-101, though the final score is not indicative of how the game was played. We are doing a continuation, for those of you watching on YouTube, of the show that just ended about a minute ago. For those of you listening on audio streams, this is the second half of the show. You can pretty easily find and subscribe and join the show live. If you want to participate on YouTube, just seek out Pod Maverick. It should be in the comments of the YouTube chat, or I'm sorry, of the podcast, written audio section. You can very easily find and subscribe. That way we can have folks join. This is the portion of the show where you as Mavericks fans or, Mavericks haters have the opportunity to, click the pinned link in the YouTube chat, and you can come up on stage here and we can talk a little basketball. Jared Sullivan in the chat already noticed, weren't you supposed to have the night off? Yes, I was. I am single parenting tonight, but a little bit of a miracle has happened. My 6-week-old is asleep. He went to sleep before the show started. Now, I might pay for that at some point later tonight, usually probably between the hours of 2 a.m. and 7 a.m. But if it means I can make Mavs content, I'm happy to go ahead and do it for you. Josh Bowe had something come up last minute, and so I still wanted to go ahead and do something for you guys. And I just like talking basketball. I thought that was a really interesting game. So remember, go ahead and seek out the pinned comment in the chat. It's a link to a service called StreamYard. It's really easy to join. We have, anywhere between 5 and 10 people join us in a regular show. It's a lot of fun to stay in here and hang out. Coming up first is my man, Brian, who joined us the other night. And Brian, and we will do our best to not talk about Blue Eyes Samurai immediately, but we may pivot to that a little later just in our chat here. So Brian, what's going on, man?
We might need to. That was more interesting than the game tonight, at least in the second half.
Yeah.
It was, I don't know, man. I'm not too disappointed just because we tucked that Lakers win in our back pocket. So that makes it easier. But yeah, Tim just had an uncharacteristically bad game shooting the ball. And Grant, we thought that Grant was back a little too soon because he played well in the Lakers game, or he shot the ball well in the Lakers game. And tonight he was just nothing from three. Nothing really on defense. I was just waiting to see if Kid was going to let go of the rope and, give Omax those minutes once he was, clearly stinking it up. And It just never happened. And I was disappointed by that.
The minute distribution on this is particularly weird because, yes, it's the fourth game in 7 days. You sort of know that. And it was really nice to see the Mavericks put up a hell of a fight. Not going to lie about that. It's nice to see Luka come out looking like a lunatic and just ready to go play basketball and get into fights early on. What is more interesting, though, is when certain guys didn't have it, like you said, Kid just let them play out the string, and they didn't give anybody a chance here. I mean, let's see here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 guys that played 30-plus minutes. I guess Dante only played 28 minutes, but Dante should have played more minutes, A. And
Mm-hmm.
you got to wind down Grant's minutes a little bit. Why not, turn up the spigot? You're playing Marquise Morris 13 minutes in the year of our Lord 2023. Like that can't be a thing. That can't be a thing. It's one of it. I don't have Morris has actually played better than I thought he would have. I remember being real mad and just kind of keeping it to myself when the Mavericks signed him to that partially guaranteed deal. But you got other guys out there. Like, what's the point of having, a Greg Brown the third and then AJ Lawson? I guess, you're playing against a really superior team defense, and that's part of it. But I'm sort of confused as to what the Mavericks or what Jason Kidd in particular was hoping to get out of this game. I mean, I guess it was close enough for long enough that some of this was justified. But then when you end up getting beat by 17 or whatnot, it's like, maybe it would have been nice to see some of the younger guys. I don't know. We fry kids sometimes. I just have a hard time with it. This is one of those things where it's easier in hindsight than in the moment, because they were hanging around, and then friggin' Naz Reid hits a billion threes.
Well, no, I'm not gonna lie. It was easy to tell in the moment because we were hanging around in spite of Grant Williams. Like Tim was bad shooting the ball, and Tim wasn't good on defense. But that's just kind of Tim. Grant, he was actively, I felt like he was playing for the other team. Like, it was really, really bad. Like, just getting blown by over and over and over by their centers, their wings, their guards. It didn't matter. Whoever was being guarded by Grant Williams, you could get to the rim whenever you wanted. And then you get to the other end, they were 6, 7, 8 feet off of him, 2 feet in the paint. And he just wasn't making them pay. And it's like, all right, Jason, you got to make a switch, brother. I get you want to rely on your vets, but come on, man. He's not giving you anything. The Morris twin, I could see going to him for at least a little bit because he was good in both of the last 2 games. But you can tell pretty early on with him whether he's got it or not. And 3 minutes in, you could tell he didn't have it. It was time to go to Omax. It was time to give Greg Brown a couple of minutes, especially once Lively started getting beat up in the paint. Like, he held his own and actually kind of outplayed Rudy, which was really impressive. But after a certain point, man, we couldn't get a defensive rebound. We couldn't close possessions. And that's on top of already not being able to hit outside shots. If we didn't get to the paint, we didn't score tonight unless it was like Luka.
The Mavericks haven't had a shooting game quite like that. It's been a couple of weeks. They just have enough good shooters to where somebody gets something to go down, and Tim Hardaway 0 for 7. My goodness, what a brutal performance in that regard. Man, I kind of agree with this comment in the chat. I think I do agree with that. I showed it a little bit. Jared Sullivan says, Mavs lost to a pretty healthy team with the best record in the league while missing their second best player and 2 other rotation guys after 3 games in 4 days. If there's such a game or such a thing as a good loss, it's this. I tend to agree, though. I think we have another guy in the chat, Fan123, who would probably tell you, if anything, though, that's a reminder. This team is really good, and maybe they need to go make a move for somebody now so they can stop, putzing around.
Yeah, kind of. I tweeted before the game, as soon as I saw who was active and who wasn't, and once it was made official, I was like, yeah, the Minnesota's fully healthy. We're down one of our stars and 3 other rotation players. Win or lose, that's what I'm coming right back to as soon as this game is over to help keep perspective, because that's what happened.
Right.
But yeah, I actually kind of got the same feeling. The way that we played and kept pace with them, it made me feel like, okay, maybe this team isn't that far off. This is not a contender, but maybe we aren't as far off, based on how well Lively's playing compared to what expectations were at the start of the season, and how good Luka looked, how good Kyrie has looked in stretches, and how good Derek Jones is, even when he isn't able to contribute offensively, what he's able to do for us defensively, how much that helps.
Mm-hmm.
All of those factors put together, we're really just a big wing, a 4 that can kind of hold their own on the boards, really, because that's really all we kind of need. A lot of this comes down to the fact that, okay, when Grant isn't hitting threes and just crushing the other team from behind the 3-point arc, it's really, 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 really easy to see just how small he is.
Yeah.
He's super strong, but being 6'5", playing the power forward against Karl-Anthony Towns, it is tough business, and it makes almost everything harder for us on both ends when we're trying to put on against 2 7-footers or get to the paint against 2 7-footers. And yeah, he just didn't have it tonight in a way that kind of killed us. And it was also just kind of disappointing to see. I get riding things out with Tim because of how good he's been this year. But it sucks because Jaden actually started the game really well. He had a 3 and then a really tough bucket right through Gobert's chest at the rim. I think he made a mistake right after that, but he had a good enough start to the game where I'm like, okay, maybe you kind of ride this out with him if nobody else can hit shots and see if he can just get hot and keep you in the game. And Kid just kind of never went back to that, and we just kind of got sunk in the end by that point. But I'm still encouraged by how well we played against this team, despite all the guys we were missing.
So let me ask you a hater question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you miss Josh Green at all?
Not in the slightest.
Yeah, that's kind of the guy I think can we trade him? This is where I need my man Scott, CBA Mavs, who is living his real life, which is why he hasn't been able to help that much. But I need him to explain when we can move Josh, because I think now he can be a good player. I actually do think Josh can be a good player. I don't think he's ever going to be a good player with this team. He needs the ball a little too much. He's never going to get it.
Once we traded for Kyrie, it just made things difficult for the kind of role that he can have on his team and how much he can have the ball and the kind of opportunities he's going to get and the kind that he needs really to develop into what he can be. He can be traded right now. It's a poison pill deal, so it'll be $4 million outgoing for us, $11 million incoming for the other.
So you'd have to wait till next year for it to be like a dollar for dollar kind of deal when he's actually making the $13 million a year, whatever it is.
Yeah, but you could do it right now. It's easy, man. I've been in this trade machine so much in the last 2 months. I can tell you every single place that Josh Green can be traded and who he can be traded for, and what.
It's a shame because I've sort of settled on the fact that I know. It's just I'm watching like tonight's game, and at no point I did the thought cross my mind. Hey, you know what? This game could use Josh Green. It just it didn't. That wasn't a thing because it's like the Mavericks have a bunch of guys who are all pretty good at some stuff, and if they're not working, it's not like I don't know. I'm not really making sense because it's like you got Josh Green, you have Dante Exum, you have Grant Williams, you have Derek Jones Jr., who's probably the tallest of those four.
Yes.
Limited, like wingy, guardy, very like sort of, I don't know what you want to call them, like tweener guys that can play lots of different positions, but none of them are particularly stand out. And Exum has with his ability to handle and make decisions has shown to be the best. Like I think he's the third heat with the guards that the Dallas Mavericks use.
Yeah, the Spencer way. Yeah.
Yeah, and like the way Spencer was very different from Brunson and Luka. But I see Green, and it's like, Green's a shooting guard who guards forwards sometimes, but doesn't really guard anybody particularly well. There's Grant, who I do agree with. I'm very hard on Grant, but when he plays defense, it's like, oh, okay, that's why Grant is doing the things. He just needs to hit the occasional shot. Derek Jones Jr. has obviously been a revelation with Luka. And then I don't know. I think it would make the most sense to try to trade Green. I just don't. I feel very, very kind of sad about it all because he was coming into his own, and then he gets hurt for like the fourth time in a weird way. I don't know. Maybe he comes back and shoots the ball like gangbusters, which is what he did last year. Like he came back and really looked amazing. But the season was lost at that point.
Yeah, that was like going into the Utah games,
something like that. Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not too sad about it, but only because from the start of the season, or going even back into like the summer, I knew if we were going to give him this extension, and I was hoping that we would give it to him, and eventually we did. I waited too long to do it. I knew we were giving him this extension just so that we could have extra money on the back end of his contract so that we could trade him. Like, he's kind of always been, as soon as the Kyrie trade was made, like I said, he's been the odd duck out. That's just kind of what it is. There's not really an ideal role for him on this team.
Right.
And it'd be much easier for him to find it elsewhere and us to try to recoup value for in the form of like a player who better fits what this roster needs. And that's just kind of always what it was going to be to me. So I'm just enjoying the Josh Green good performances that we get while we have him. And then when he's gone, salute him for his service. But that's how the business goes.
Well, Brian, you're the man for helping me kick off this show. I think this the folks who are talking to me about how the algorithm and stuff works within YouTube, it makes sense to transition from one show to another just because we keep the number of viewers in here. But I think we're also less likely to have the same kind of gang of folks who wants to come up and talk basketball. Because I mean, the barrier for entry of being on screen in front of people is like really off-putting. I get it, and I'm glad that you're helping me out. I really appreciate talking ball with me. It's also just fun. We got, some other folks that have joined in the meantime, and we're gonna get to them. But I always really, really appreciate you coming up. If you ever want to write anything, you shoot me a message, and Mavs Moneyball would probably publish it. So,
oh, brother, you flatter me, but thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, man. We'll talk soon.
Yes, sir.
All right. Don't mean to almost press ban from the studio. That's the wrong button. All right. My friend Simon is coming up next. Simon, what are you doing tonight? How's it going?
Kirk, I appreciate you bringing me on and being the second guest, because I know that I'm on East Coast time. And so I did. And you're out there.
You're out there in Washington, D.C., where they're about to lose their minds. The city of D.C. is, because the Washington Wizards arena, are they looking like, we don't need to talk about this, but they're looking about building an arena in Virginia, and it's like causing a national crisis. Like Washington, it's amazing. And that's where I used to live. It's just, it cracks me up so much that's an option. But anyway, what do we think about these Mavs? What are you thinking, dude?
On that point real quick, and then I'll get to the Mavs. So
sure.
I live in Arlington. And my grandmother lives in Springfield. So that 395 trip south in the afternoon is about to be a lot more arduous if that goes through. All right. Going back to the Mavs. I think the last time I talked to you was after the Houston game, maybe. So I can, I hop on every now and then. I want to start on a positive note, just two things that I like, and then I'll get to the stuff I don't like.
Sure, please. Yeah, let's do it.
So I think we have a large enough sample size to say that Derek Lively has been better as a rookie than any Mavs fan could have reasonably expected, which is huge. I mean, I think he's probably going to make the all-rookie team at this point. If he took a straw poll 20-something games into the season, obviously I think Victor and Chet, and these teams aren't, they're not chosen by position. And then you would probably have Asar from Detroit and Jaquez from Miami. And then Lively would probably be the fifth guy. And him and Chet are the only ones, I guess Jaquez too, that are contributing to winning teams. And as you've stated so many times, over the years, it's just nice to have somebody out there that's big and that has size and athleticism. And, versus like a Dwight Powell who is constantly giving up inches to like somebody like Gobert. I can't say enough about Lively. He's been better than I think anybody could have expected up to this point of the season. I mean, we really didn't know if he was even going to be ready to play NBA basketball, coming into the season as a rookie, given that, he averaged 5 points a game last year at Duke. We really didn't know what to expect, but I think he's been better in the aggregate than anybody could have expected. So that's a positive development.
He was somehow seventh on the NBA rookie ladder that was published this week, and it's like, what is how? What they have Asar Thompson who's kind of been pulled from the rotation. It's so weird. Hey, keep talking. If I happen to disappear and go off screen, it's because I can see my child crying in his bassinet, and I'm going to go get him, and he's going to come join the show. Hey, tell me your second point though. I will be right back.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you talk.
Luka. So Luka's free throws, that's kind of been a bugaboo in his career and the season, but it seems like the last 5, 6, 7 to 10 games, the way it looks to me is, he's obviously been shooting a higher percentage, but it looks like he's made a mechanical tweak on his free throws where, he's not dipping the ball as much and he's not bringing it behind his head as much as he's done in the past. He shortened motion and he's cashing in on his free throws. So that's a very, very positive development, and I've loved to see it. So I
agree with everything you just said, even though I didn't hear any of it. So
okay,
this is fantastic. Okay. Sorry about that, by the way.
No, I was just talking about Luka's free throws.
Oh yeah, really? Isn't that something? That's just a delight.
Yeah. Well, like I said, what I was saying earlier, and I'm sorry for everybody who else is listening. I have to repeat myself, but I was just saying, it looks like he's made a mechanical he's made a mechanical tweak. He shortened his motion. It's more point A to point B, and there's less hitching, and because like when you shoot free throws, the more, I mean, as you play basketball, the more motion you have in it, the more room there is to for the shot to go wayward.
Yeah,
he seems to tighten that up. So that's a great development.
No, it's very positive. You're right about that.
Very positive, and I hope it continues. Okay, couple things regarding the game tonight. Number one, I think you talked about this with Ben earlier. There was the play in the first quarter where Luka's driving to the basket. I can't remember if it was McDaniels or who was guarding him. But he clearly gets slapped on the arm. There's no call, and he says something to the ref, and the ref tees him up. That has to be like able to be reviewed by the league as a complete non-call, and the guy gets frustrated over an obvious miscall and gets
so get this. So sometimes,
yeah,
I have some what they talked to the refs about after a question. What did Lucas say that caused the first quarter technical to be called? The referee, after a no call, Luka overtly gestures by hitting his hand multiple times while yelling "call the foul" and aggressively walking toward the official. Like, get the fuck out of here. Grow up. This is not
I know.
What are we doing? Like, granted, he needs to stop some of that shit, but it's like, don't tee him up. Pull him aside and yeah. Oh my God.
No, I agree. And I think that could have been an incident where his reputation preceded him and hurt
absolutely
him in terms of his complaining. Yeah, right. But I've kind of been on the same point that you've been on in terms of he needs to cut it out. He needs to, but in that situation he was right. It's like they say, never believe a liar even when he's telling the truth.
Well, it feels like there's some emphasis this year with the league where it's like, hey, let's really cut out the disrespect of officials. And the way you cut out disrespect of officials, it's quit fucking up officials. That's how this happens.
Better officiating. And
be better.
That's going to lead
you won't be disrespected all the time.
The next point was there was the three that they took away. It was like there was like 2 minutes left in the first quarter. Luka goes to the left. He hits a step back three. And then after the quarter ends, they review it. And then they say he was out of bounds and they take it away. I mean, I don't know what the protocol is in that situation, but I mean, what? So like the end of the quarter, you can just review any play that happened at any point in the quarter and reverse it. Like I don't understand that. I mean,
review's a mess, man.
That's just
I know.
It's just ridiculous. Yeah, and they fuck up the game and they take and sorry, excuse my language.
I don't care. I curse all the time.
Yeah, I know, but I know you have a baby. So
he's 6 weeks old. He doesn't know what the word fuck means. He's fine.
Okay. Now those were just kind of my points on the game of the night. Now kind of onto the bigger picture stuff. So with Luka, and I don't know why it bothers me so much because he seems to be doing this thing where he'll get. It's hard to complain about the game tonight, except for the turnovers. But obviously, he's making great passes, and other guys aren't hitting shots and whatever.
He still finished 13 assists.
He's finished with 13 assists. He made great passes. He played a great floor game as he always does. But there are so many times where he gets to the paint and he has like an open 3 to 5 footer. And then he just whips a pass to the corner to either like Derek Jones or Grant Williams for like a contested three.
Mm-hmm.
And it just doesn't seem to be the optimal decision there. I don't know if he's like scared of getting blocked or if Rudy.
I think that's that's the Gobert element for me. He's gotten better about that, but that is definitely the Gobert element for me.
but it's, he did it tonight, but he's been doing it all season where, last year and then especially in 1920, year 2, where he was just like, and I brought this one up before, where he's attacking the rim with abandon. That's when he's playing his best.
Sure.
And he just, and he's still touching the paint, probably just as frequently, but those paint touches don't seem to be, with the intent of going in and finishing and then making the adjustment once the help comes. It seems to be like, okay, he's touching the paint, but it's almost like he, the first option is to try for a cross court pass, for a quarter 3, when that should be the second option. As far as the turnovers go, obviously, as much as he handles the ball, he's going to turn it over some. But like sometimes he throws passes like what I do when I'm playing pickup, and I don't really care. Like I'm gonna try to nutmeg a guy here. I'm gonna throw it behind the back. But like in the NBA, like these fucking possessions, like they matter. And in the aggregate, they hurt the team. Now, as far as Dallas overall and Jason Kidd coaching, Luka probably has to set the record, for most times being doubled at half court. That seems to be a strategy that other teams are increasingly employing. When he's bringing the ball up now, when Kyrie Irving's on the court, playing that 4-on-3 style when Luka's giving it up at half court and, letting everybody else go to work, that probably works a lot better. But when Kyrie's not out there and it's Lively who has to make the decision, and Lively, to his credit, he's a pretty good passer for his age and his position. But there doesn't seem to really be any adjustment from the coaching staff or from Luka when that defense kind of bogs the Mavericks offense down, except for the occasional Luka post up. So I don't, aside from Kyrie just getting back and healthy, I don't know what the strategic
there's some stuff they haven't even bothered to break out yet offensively, and I think that will start to come but they're not playing this team every night. Like there's certain teams they can break, and they don't need to bust out the fine china. But I understand what you mean, because there's just times where man, can we get an easy bucket? Can we do something? Where's the easy button for this offense? And that sometimes can be it just doesn't exist.
Right. So. Well, there's the easy button, but there's also just kind of the just basic adjustment. I know Luka has to have the ball most of the time, especially when Kyrie's not out there. But I don't know what it would be. But maybe Exum, seems perfectly capable of transporting the ball from point A to point B.
That I think is your answer, and they need to do it more. Yeah.
They need to, and they would need to do it more. And I've said it Hardaway, I just really have no, I know, against the Lakers, he really, he made shots and he was a big part of that win, but I just really have no particular taste for the way that he plays basketball.
I understand.
So
I do.
That's just a personal preference. But that's really all I got.
Simon, you're the man for joining us late. Yeah. You enjoy your Friday, and hopefully we'll talk at some point in the next couple of days when we do another one of these. All right.
We'll talk soon, man.
All right, later. Okay. Once again, sorry for everyone for having to deal with me for 30 seconds while I sprinted upstairs to grab the child. He is back asleep now, but when they make these noises in their sleep, it's very off-putting. All right, we're going to let a show legend join. One of my first green room callers way back when we were doing audio only. This will be my first time seeing him face-to-face. Really appreciate him joining the show. Mr. Doe Dang, how you doing, my guy? What's going on?
Hey, how you doing, Kirk? Congratulations on the newest member of your family.
Thank you. Every day is an adventure. I was really proud of myself because I got him to go to sleep he fell asleep on his own, and then he woke up on his own in the middle of this. I was hoping I could buy at least an hour because we're kind of at the hour mark right now. I got 45 minutes. That's better than I could have expected. So what's going on?
Well, I wish they would play Omax more, at least 10 minutes a game. Because the biggest thing that you pointed out and a bunch of other users pointed out is, size is an issue that we have. And, spending that extra time to try to develop them, I think it's worth it. It might hurt us a little bit in the beginning, But overall, in the course of a season, it's something that we can control because we can't control trades right now.
Right.
Most of the development we have has to be within the roster that we have. And if you look at all the best teams, they all have size. If you look in the East, the top 2 teams, top 3 teams, Boston has size. Philly has size. Milwaukee has size. Then you look at the West, it's the same thing. You got Denver has size. You have the team we played tonight, Minnesota, has size. So the only way we can counter that, I think, is if we, try to develop Omax, a little bit more, because he might not be a power forward, but he has a whole lot more length than most of the other forwards we have.
He's so much bigger when he's on the court. It's very apparent that he is a big person relative to the other players that we have.
Oh yeah, and then we have enough firepower in offense. If we could sacrifice a little bit for developing him because of his defense and his length.
Yeah, well, and when he was hitting shots like he did, which game was it? It wasn't the Lakers. It was
Memphis.
That's fun. Like, he started out and he like almost killed someone with the broad side of the backboard kind of shot. And then he hit 3. It was nice. It's fun. So
it is, the energy that he brings, is really contagious too, so it'd be nice to see. But just like the other user said, we have a glut of guards, we need to trade them away. It might be tough to package up Green and Hardy and a first round pick. But if we want to move up, to be a top half team, compete against these larger teams, I think that's the only way to go, or we have to wait for another offseason to either pick up a free agent. Did I not call Naz Reid last year? I said we need to
but it's tough because like the Mavericks did have they didn't have the space to sign him into. So that, it's like that's where acquiring guys, like getting a guy like so they have Exum right now. So they don't just have him for 1 year, they have him for 2. And then when that second year is up, I don't necessarily think they would have bird rights or anything on him, but he's already with your team. And if he's happy with you and you have the ability to overpay him, maybe you get to keep him. That's where like they've done a good job this year of cycling in kind of these veterans who can actually play as opposed to veterans who can take up space. So I'm looking for, the front office has done a good job, but you don't rebuild Rome in a day. And the size thing is going to continue to hurt them. I don't really know what to do about it this year. I just think there's going to be games. Like, frankly, I thought this is a game where the Mavericks were going to get waxed. And that they didn't is pretty great. They did in the end, but, that didn't have, it wasn't like it was a 20-point blowout in the second quarter.
Yeah, I agree with you. They've made major steps. And I think it's because Cuban has really finally let the reins go and let Nico and Michael Finley really do their jobs. And that new consultant too. That was a brilliant pickup.
Dennis Lindsay. For sure.
I think the Exum move was definitely all his, based on his suggestion.
You're right. Cause he was a Jazz guy. No, I think you're right. That's a good call. I hadn't thought about that.
But, I'm very pleased so far, of the season that we've had. There's no way that I could have predicted that they'd be, at this rate of wins versus losses. I was thinking maybe 500 to start the season, and maybe sneak in, in 6th slot before we don't have to do the play-in. But, if we can continue the rate that we have, beat the teams that we need to beat, and then, split with the better teams, then I think we'll have a successful season. It's something to build upon.
That's right, my man. Thanks so much for joining the new format. I'm glad you're here. I hope you come back at some point.
I definitely will. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate you and Josh doing these things. I know y'all have a lot going on, and it's great that y'all allow us to vent, especially after the losses. That's right.
All right, man. We'll talk soon. Have a good one.
All right. Take care.
There's a good comment in the chat from Darko. I don't want to butcher his last name because there's some I don't want to mess it up. But Darko in the chat says, we have the best first man, meaning Luka, and the best sixth man, and all I hear is trade THJ. Trading him is not the right step in my opinion. Darko, I will say every time the Mavericks lose, we want to trade THJ. That's just kind of a thing. I don't know if I really don't think the Mavericks ever will trade THJ. All right. So coming up next, we got my man Harold, and then we're going to close out with Krishna unless anybody else wants to come talk. If anybody wants to come talk, go ahead and hit that. There's a link, and I'll actually share it again. It's a StreamYard link. You can come in here. If you have a phone, if you're in front of your computer, it's really easy to do. And it's fun to come talk basketball with me. So coming up next is Harold. How you doing, Harold? That's
Hey,
2 shows
Kirk.
in a row for you. Look at
Because
that.
I'm frustrated again. So, like last night, I was frustrated about a comment somebody made, and the whole Tim Hardaway Jr. thing is just triggering me, brother. It's just triggering me. So, here's the deal. I can remember a couple of years ago, if you recall, I was actually talking to you, and you were really saying that Tim Hardaway Jr. that we have, what is it, like 9 months or whatever years of knowledge that his 3-pointer is just no good. And yes, he shot the 3-pointer well for a little while for us, but he's just not somebody that we should trade him, basically. And his trade value had gone to almost nothing at that point.
Yeah.
And I was telling you, no, he's valuable. He's very valuable. He's going to be good for us. But now people are getting carried away. Okay, like they're acting like he's indispensable to the team. And what I'm saying is that he's very valuable. He's still valuable to us. But he should not be somebody who's playing over 30 minutes a game. I never wanted him to be. I didn't want him to play 5 minutes. That's too little. And over 30 minutes is too much. He gets hot. And we know this, right? And Luka will kick it out to him, and boy, he gets hot. And we all get super impressed and amazed by him.
Do you think we should have kind of like like what I was proposing last year with the Davis Bertans rule, which was like have like an X number of shot minimum, where if he goes like one of his first 4, you yank his ass out of the game. But if he hits an easy one, because it's just like when Tim just goes from hot to cold, like, or he goes from cold to hot like that, where it's just like, One thing I am curious about your take on, though, is I've sort of settled on the fact that I think where Tim's value lies in the fact that he's willing to take the shitty shots. Who would you have replace him on that? Because I can't handle another Luka step back into the diet. Do you just think it's like more Kyrie, more Dante Exum getting a little more freelancy? What would you like to see if they happen to move on from Tim?
Well, clearly Kyrie can take the shitty shot. There's no doubt of that from Luka. I mean, he can definitely do that. He's great at that. But he might be the only person that might be able to get Grant. When early in the year, he was able to like release really fast. But we know Kyrie can do it. That's for sure. Okay, so but here's the thing: is that like you guys know, like in 2022 when we went that second half of the year when we were playing 700 ball. Remember, you were saying like they played 700 ball. Do you realize how good that is for half a season, right?
It was
Tim Hardaway Jr. was nowhere on the team.
To be found. That's a good point. Yeah,
nowhere. He's not indispensable.
Yeah,
he's not. And then he did not exist for us in the playoffs. We went to the Western Conference Finals. If Tim Hardaway Jr. hit every single 3-pointer that he attempted tonight, if he went 7 for 7, his plus minus tonight would still have been -9. Okay, even if he was hot as hell. For against certain teams, he's a small guard. I mean, 6'5". He does not play defense. Okay, so if he's not hitting his 3-pointers, he's completely useless. Completely. Now he does. Yes, it's great that he takes the shots. It's great, but it's I really think that there used to be a guy, and this is probably before anybody's time here because I'm 49. Played for the Detroit Pistons. Okay, in the late 80s. His name was Vinnie Johnson, and his nickname was the Microwave. Okay, because he can get hot and shoot, but he wasn't a defensive player. That was a defensive team, but he wasn't a great defensive player. He would come in and he would be a spark to the team. And so I think he's clearly better than Davis Bertans because Bertans, I mean, he's not
there was more to Vinny's game than just shooting. It was scoring.
Yeah. Like and especially back then, 3-pointers weren't valued as much back then. So yeah, he would do a lot more. But I just think that Tim should be used as a spark plug, but that the team should be focused on the offensive genius of Kyrie, Luka, throw it in the lobby, hit your 3-pointers, play good defense, and let Tim come in and shoot some 3-pointers. But the point is that he is valuable. He's viewed as valuable around the league, and we really do need to get that bigger more of an inside presence to help Lively out. And I really don't think we need Tim. Okay. His spectacular shooting at times is, I think, hypnotizing us and blinding us to the overall team play that I think can, that we need to get to where we want to get to.
I do unfortunately think that if you trade Timmy, you actually trade him to a team that's better than you right now. Like you take, because most contending teams want shooters. So I think that's a little bit of a challenge of if you're trading him to somebody, you're trading him to a team and probably getting back somebody a little more developmental. Which in some cases people are really interested in. I mean, I like younger players. It's sort of, you've mentioned to me a couple of times when we've talked offline about how you think this is a team that with the right move could be a true contender. I just don't see them to be able to become one without, because they do need the big. Like the big is obvious. Like when you're playing Dwight Powell once again, it's like, and I just am very curious if you think there's anybody out there that they could go reasonably get.
Well, not necessarily a big. I just think
another forward or guard. Then is there anybody that you like?
I I love Anunoby, but I just don't think he'll be available. I'd have to look.
He's like the guy in your fantasy football league who will never accept trades.
And I think that somebody like Mikal Bridges is going to just too many first round draft picks. I don't think we have. So
he'd be.
So I'd have to look at what else is out there. But if we can use Tim Hardaway Jr., just understand that his role is not to be a primary option on this team. It's something like, a lot of people are overrated because they do spectacular things.
Sure.
Like, for example, I think Steph Curry is overrated historically. Okay. I think he's the greatest shooter I've ever seen. I can say that too. He's the greatest shooter I've ever seen. But yet I do think he's overrated historically, where people are wanting to put him in the top 10. And I would never, I could name 15 people historically I'd rather have over Steph Curry. However, his shooting is so spectacular that it just blows people's minds. And the same thing that happens with Kobe Bryant. He looks a lot like Michael Jordan. Therefore, he must be top 5 too. And he's not. So anyway, the point is, some people are overrated, and because they do one thing spectacularly. And I think Tim Hardaway is overrated, and we should be open to trading him and not be afraid, because we still have Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Derek Lively, and we are a good team. So let's just let go of the Tim Hardaway obsessions, guys. But not you, Kirk. I love you.
Thanks so much for staying up late to talk to me. All right.
All right, man. Take care.
Right, talk soon. All right. I got to read this quote because this is just beautiful trolling. Before we close out with Krishna, Rudy Gobert was asked about Draymond Green, and he said, "I have empathy for him. You see somebody that's not well inside and suffering. You take away the game and all that, and you want somebody to be well and be able to do what we do every night and compete and be happy." I'm sorry, maybe I'm just being a prick here, but to me, that's Rudy Gobert saying, "Oh, bless his heart." I just, and there's a writer that I follow, Jay Caspian Kang. Doesn't look like he's writing for anybody right now, but he had a quote earlier. It said, "So the NBA decided to frame all this Draymond stuff as a mental health thing." Man, there's this whole mental health washing phenomenon that should be talked about with appropriate sensitivity. Why wasn't it mental health when he stomped on Sabonis's chest? Man, I'm just so glad we don't have to deal with that thing. There's all these weird, what if the Mavericks traded for Draymond Green? I'm sorry, Draymond Green is washed. He is washed. And plus, and I mean this seriously, we have there's a one asshole rule on the team. We have one asshole. His name is Luka Doncic. We don't need another one. All right, coming up next, Krishna.
Oh, Kirk, please keep Draymond Green away from the Mavericks, far away as possible.
I mean, he brings a lot of intangibles, but it's just this man has.
Here's the thing.
He's done some crazy shit this season.
I don't think he's completely washed. I think he's a good defender, but he's lost that physical strength that he had when he was much younger.
Sure.
And he's still good. He's still smart enough to play on the defensive end of the ball. He still has the offensive knowledge to be a passing big, right?
Right.
But he's lost the physical element that he had that let him play so well against guys who are way stronger, way bigger than him. And God, that tweet, it still makes me mad. It shows to me at least how much Drake, like, names now. I agree with Harold in one point. Names become more rated than what players actually are in situations. And I don't agree with him on the Steph Curry take. I still think
it's a fight, but I get where he's going for.
I get where he's coming
from.
from.
Yeah,
I get what he's coming from. The part I just would disagree is that Steph Curry's, like, the longevity of his shooting and the level of his shooting is so unbefore seen.
It's a great sports talk take. I love it because it provokes conversation.
I would never say don't have that take. I just personally don't have it. That's just all. But I get what he's saying, right? Like, to me, that's how I feel about Draymond. Where I think Draymond in his prime, when the Warriors played peak team basketball, where Steph wasn't really a point guard in the sense that Steph did way more off ball. And Draymond was the guy who, set screens and was really positive in getting Draymond the open shots.
Right.
Getting Steph open shots. Yes, I would agree. Draymond was in his prime then. But since then, he's slowed down, which is, inevitable. And he's become increasingly more frustrated, I think, with this inevitability. And he's tried to play more physical, but in a way, I think that's held it back. Enough of Draymond. I don't want to talk about that too much.
Okay. Look, we're an hour into the show. Let's get weird. What did you think about the game tonight?
I mean, this was kind of like the Laker game where I thought, okay, going in, we're going to get, we're probably going to lose pretty badly. And I missed most of the first half, but I came in during the third quarter. And you could just see it. This team was kind of just exhausted. 4 games where you had to basically play down to 3 games where you played down to the wire. And the thing I still take away from all of this is there's effort, right? And the one thing I'm still going to take away is hopefully you consistently see effort, and as guys get healthier, you hope that effort still continues. But this is a team where this is clearly a team, just a bad matchup for the Mavericks. You talked about it last night with Josh or the night before. That's just a team that's way too large for the Mavericks. Like, they had a lineup, I think, at one point of Rudy Gobert, Cat, and Naz Reid as their 5, 4, and 3.
That's amazing.
That is a stupid lineup. Like, that is a lineup straight out of the 80s. That is legitimately a lineup out of the 80s.
Naz Reid is just, it's like Doe was on the show a little bit ago, and he was talking about Naz Reid last year. It's like, that's just the kind of guy that the Mavericks can never, ever get. Because they don't, I don't know enough about Reed's history, but it's just he would be like a starter on 20 teams in the league. He just would.
Yeah, well, but the thing is, Minnesota has those players because they've been bad for so many years, right? Like, that's the thing I don't think people easily forget, but really good teams are really bad for a long, long time. Like, it's very rare for teams to have sustained periods of success for a long time, right? Like, you think about the Chicago Bulls, they were so dominant in the 90s, but even in the 80s, they were not a great team. And now you've seen it. They've not been a great team since, realistically, other than obviously the stint with D Rose. And
right.
There's no team that is that dominant for that long. And so Naz Reid is a byproduct of that team having so many bites at the apples, because the Timberwolves recently have been a much better drafting team with Cat and Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels and so on and so on and so on. But they were that because they drafted so poorly for the longest time, where they passed over Steph Curry twice in one draft with 2 picks. Like, that happens because you just mess up so many times. And I don't want to say you get lucky, but at some point you just make the right decisions. And I get it, right? I'm not saying Naz specifically, but I'm saying players like Naz Reid, you get over time because you just have so many bites at the apple, and you get a UDFA.
Kubler notes in the chat: the Wolves got Naz as an undrafted free agent, not because they were bad.
I should correct myself. Yeah, Naz, maybe not Naz specifically.
They have a lot of just like, talent, and then they went all in with Rudy Gobert, and they got who's my guy out of Ohio State, Mike Conley, who I wanted. Yeah, they've just done a lot of good team building things that have come together in a positive way, in a way where it's like the Mavericks have never had those kind of bites at the apple because they've not valued the draft. We've talked about that for 3 years.
No, and the reason you got Conley and Gobert is because you had picks and you had players that the Jazz viewed as valuable, who then they flipped later on, right? And so I get what you're saying. Yeah, Nas was a UDFA, but how do you get really good UDFAs? Well, you prove that you have one space on your
scout.
roster. Yeah,
and then you make
scout,
offers.
you have space on your roster, and you
Yeah.
give players opportunity. And it's not that I don't think the Mavericks have never done it. I think probably one of the most successful stories of that is DFS, but that's like one out of many. And I think it's
but you got to do it better. I mean, like that's where we were mad about Bane for 2 years because Bane was in the Mavericks' backyard and Donnie never went to see him play.
And that's where I think I've talked about it a few times. I feel like this is a team that is realistically more a team that we've seen. We should have seen in Luka's second year, where guys are just really young, need more experience, but you still have a mixture of old veterans. And I think ultimately, I get everyone's perspective, but I also don't think like the thing that we've seen in this short amount of time from this front office is I don't think they're afraid to make moves. I think they'll make a move if they need to, but I also don't think it's very much like the other front. Like you mentioned Donnie. I think Donnie was the kind of GM where it was like, oh, I'm just going to make a move. Like we need to make a move. I'll make a move. Where it feels like Nico, he's made bad moves. I'm not going to completely defend him, but it feels like he's more opportunistic in that sense, where it's like if there's something that they feel is worth the value, then they'll make it. Like you mentioned, what would teams trade for? I think the Warriors are markedly worse than the Mavericks, I would say at this point. I think they would trade for Tim just because they badly need shooting, but what would you get? I think the best you could hope for is Moses Moody, who I think is a pretty good player.
Yeah, but are you going to throw that guy in your lineup as you're questing for a outside of the play-in seed? And like we would love to say yes, but if he's not going to play, the guy, Lively sort of made the case, but most wings and most players just don't. They just don't have like they progress is not I always tell I'm involved in a nonprofit fundraising, and I always have to explain to the person above me, where I'm like, you're like the growth chart is not like this. You don't always. I'm sorry. I should be doing it the other way because of the way, sorry, free hands. But it's not always like there are regressions. There are things where you take steps back, and player development is usually that way.
I mean, exactly. Like you think about it, I think Kuminga is a higher draft pick than Moody, but you're seeing Moody play better for them. Like that's just not expected.
I haven't seen them play. I'm not gonna lie.
He's been better for them than Kuminga, but part of it is the argument is that Kuminga doesn't get enough chances, right?
Sure.
Ultimately, the point is, even if you get a young guy, it doesn't guarantee that even if that young guy fits the archetype of what you want, it works.
That's right.
You need to have bites at the apple, and so I don't know. I'm not that worried about this team. Like if you told me at the beginning of the season we were going to be 15-8. Going through this point, and we had multiple injuries through this point, I would have been like, there's no way I would have believed you. And I think it's positive that they have this start. My only concern is they keep it up, but it helps that there's like a mixture of games that are a little easier, but December is a brutal stretch, and ultimately I'm not that worried. I think it just takes time, right? It's just the frustrating thing is it takes time, and I get it. We always we want things now, and I don't blame anyone. And I think the THJ stuff is reasonable, right? I think there was talk about THJ being traded, so I don't think it's one of those things where the team looks at THJ as an unmovable piece. I think it's you need to get value for him, and obviously everyone values things differently. Like I would love OG, but I also think Masai is someone who's not going to trade these people unless he gets like
ever right.
Value.
Oh yeah,
I just don't think it's going to happen, and I think. Maybe I think Tim gets traded. I think more likely, I think it's next year where he
expiring, like a true expiring. Yeah.
And expiring. And it's a team who's like, oh, we just really need shooting. Like, honestly, I think it could be a team that's like kind of young where it's like a Orlando or I don't know. Like
Orlando's the team. Yeah. I mean, he's kind of the team where I think that he ends up. That's an interesting one. I don't know. I Harold makes a strong case to where I don't necessarily agree with everything, but it's like if his point to me is like that if you're relying on THJ this much, how far are you going to go? And like that's a good one. That's been the case for 2 years. Like we saw it against the Clippers several years ago. It's like when THJ dies, the offense died.
I don't even disagree. I think THJ when he's hot, when he's like on a mark, when he's boiling, like he's hot, there's no one as good as him in a way, but you can't rely on that because it's not consistent, right? The best players are not only great, but they're consistently great. And Tim, unfortunately, for as great as he's been, he's just not always consistent. And I get it. I don't even advocate for the idea that you need Tim to be such an important player all the time. But I also think moving off of him, like I want Omax to play as much as anyone, but I also know for as good as Omax looked at Memphis is a different proposition to the Lakers or Minnesota. And, it's very rare that, you just have a guy put in that role and then immediately fill in. So I'm not completely mad. And I get it. I think the team is just going to be opportunistic about it. And the other thing is, I think we've been so frustrated with this team for not having turnover. I think sometimes it's a balance, right? You need to have fresh blood every year. You need to have fresh people in the door every year, but you can't just make wholesale changes in a year and then expect it to work. Because I think of Phoenix, think about that Phoenix team. That team is so different from what they were last year.
That's right.
And in a way, I think that's good and bad because you don't have any consistency from what it is. And it's good because, okay, you have some new players and you can do new things, but it's is that really going to work? So to me, it's a balancing act, right? This team needs to still continue to add players and improve the roster, but it shouldn't completely shun anyone who's on the roster that is contributing. I wouldn't want to see the team give up on Dante or Derek Jones Jr. or anyone just because of a few bad months or whatever. But we'll have to see. I think it's a long waiting game. And I think Portland will be a good, kind of get right game again. And it helps that they've been winning for a while. So I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing to take away.
Oh, man. Thank you so much for waiting to talk.
No problem. I'm happy. I want more new people to come. So
That's right. Well, this was probably the folks who are telling me, and for those listening over audio, they're like, I'm tired of this YouTube talk. But it's interesting because if I want to do these sorts of live shows, you want to have volume in the room. You want to have people. You want to have bites at the apple. It's customer based type funnel stuff. And we have people who are hanging out, folks that are probably never going to want to talk, but then you get, one person every now and again who wants to hop in, and that's great. I mean, this is easy to do. You talk basketball for 15 minutes, and then you can probably not go check social media for 2 hours, which is what I used to do before I did these things.
It helps. If you're ever on the audio, you want to come up and join,
please do. Join. Yeah, that's right.
Everyone wants to listen to takes, man. Takes are fun. Even if you disagree with them, it's fun to listen to some takes.
Oh, that's right. I mean, and I've pulled, from Mavs Moneyball, there's 4 to 5 writers who started out doing these shows, and I was like, hey, come write, come hang out. And it's cool. It's not rocket science. I don't mean to be insulting to the real actual beat reporters, but for people that are our age, and basically when I say our age, I mean anybody under the age of 45, kind of Gen Z, Gen X and below, you spend enough time on the internet to where you know how to communicate over the written word. And it's you can do that. You can then talk in person. And it's a little bit of the touch grass movement. I mean, these shows can be fun. So, if you're listening on the audio show at some point Friday or over the weekend, consider joining the YouTube page because we'll do another one of these Saturday night. My wife is coming home tomorrow, so I won't have to attempt to hold the fort down. But luckily, this wasn't too bad. I don't know why little man here is actually just sleeping straight through.
Likes the takes. He loved that Steph Curry take.
Babies are so. I just can't. Second kid. I can't understate how freaking gross and confusing babies are. I mean, they're wonderful. Don't get me wrong, too. But it's just he's upstairs sleeping, and I'm watching on the monitor, and all of a sudden he tenses up and goes like a pterodactyl. And I'm like, what happened? You're lying there. I don't know. Weird.
My parents used to tell me I used to laugh when I got tired instead of crying. I used to just laugh hysterically and then like
a drunk person. It's good stuff.
Basically, I used to laugh and then drop dead asleep, and they were so confused.
Well, guys, we'll be back. Krishna will probably be back. He comes to at least 2 out of every 3 shows. Thanks so much for hanging out, man. I appreciate you.
Take care.
All right. So to close out the show here, thanks so much for spending part of your night with me. We'll be back on Saturday night. Josh Bowe will hopefully join. Tell your friends, tell your colleagues, tell your enemies. We should hang out here on the Pod Maverick podcast, either on YouTube or subscribing in the way you get your shows. This has been Kirk Henderson. Everybody have a great Friday, and we'll talk on Saturday. Bye, guys.